the boy from Bondy. In the dense heart of Bondy, a working-class suburb northeast of Paris, the streets were cracked, the buildings aging, but the footballs were always new. They were bought, borrowed, stitched back together, whatever it took. For a young boy named Kylian, the ball wasn't a toy. It was an extension of his body, his rhythm, his heartbeat. He played everywhere, on cracked pavement, inside empty parking garages, even in narrow hallways where one wrong move meant a broken vase and a scolding from his mother. But the scolding never lasted. Faiza Lamari, once a handball star herself, knew the fire when she saw it. His father, Wilfried, was even more certain. As a youth coach, he had trained dozens of boys. But Kylian was different. He didn't need to be told to train. He needed to be told when to stop. Each evening, as the call to prayer echoed softly across the neighborhood and shop shutters rolled down with metallic clanks, Kylian stayed outside longer than the others. He dribbled under streetlights. He weaved through shadows like they were defenders. The world shrank when the ball was at his feet. Bondy disappeared. The noise vanished. All that remained was him and the dream. But the world beyond Bondy wasn't welcoming. People from places like his weren't expected to succeed. Not truly. Scouts came with quick eyes and quicker judgments. Too skinny, some said. Too flashy, others mumbled. But Kylian didn't flinch. He'd heard the same from teachers, neighbors, even family friends. Stay realistic. At 10 years old, he taped a poster of Cristiano Ronaldo above his bed. Not because Ronaldo was rich or famous, but because Ronaldo escaped. He turned hunger into skill, doubt into trophies. Kylian didn't want to be him. He wanted to prove he belonged on that wall too. When the call finally came, an invitation to trial at Clairefontaine, France's most prestigious football academy, it didn't feel like a victory. Felt like a test. The night before, his father sat beside him. They're going to stare. You're going to feel like you don't fit. Play anyway. Clairefontaine was quiet. Too quiet. The fields were perfect. The players were tall, confident, older. Kylian stood alone. Cleats too clean. Eyes too wide. The coach didn't smile when he introduced himself. We don't care who your father is. Show us why you're here. And Kylian did. He played like the ball had chosen him. Feet blurred. Passes sliced through tight spaces. Goals came not from luck but from certainty. He wasn't trying to impress. He was trying to breathe. That night, he sat on the edge of a dormitory bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. Outside, the fields were empty. But in his chest, something had clicked into place. Not arrogance, not comfort, but clarity. He could feel it now. Bondy was where he began. Fame before the face. By 15, Kylian's name had already started to echo in places he'd never been. Scouts from Real Madrid, Chelsea, and Bayern Munich flew in quietly, trying to see if the rumors were real. His speed, blistering. His touch, magnetic. But what stunned them most was how he moved like he was already 3 steps ahead, calculating angles before the ball even arrived. Offers flooded in. 1 week, Madrid wanted him in their youth system. The next, he was boarding a plane to visit training grounds reserved for legends. The white walls, the marble floors, the photos of Ronaldo and Zidane lining the halls. It should have felt like a dream. But Kylian couldn't breathe. He smiled when cameras flashed. He nodded when agents whispered in polished tones. But inside he was shrinking. The boy from Bondy was now a brand in the making. Global image potential, one man said, while another compared his market value to teenage pop stars. No one asked how he was sleeping, or if he missed home, or if he understood what was being offered and what was being taken. Back in France, he enrolled at Monaco. Not because it was easiest, but because it felt smallest. Quieter. There, he hoped to just play football, to hide inside the game again. But even Monaco couldn't shield him from the weight he now carried. Fans lined up before matches holding signs with his name. Journalists waited outside the training center. Teammates whispered behind his back, unsure if they were playing with him or beneath him. He kept his head down, let his boots speak. His debut came quietly on a cold night. He was only 16. No spotlight, No ceremony. Just a nervous coach who muttered, "Don't do too much." But Kylian did exactly enough. He came on as a substitute and changed the tempo in an instant. The ball followed him like it remembered him from Bondy. A flick here, a sprint there. The crowd didn't roar. They tilted forward, leaning into every touch. When the whistle blew, Monaco had drawn the match. But all anyone talked about was the kid. After the game, he showered quickly, packed his small bag, and walked out through the back. No one recognized him yet. Not like they would soon. He found a bench behind the stadium and sat under a flickering lamp. For the first time in months, there were no cameras, no agents, no pressure, just silence. He opened his phone, scrolled past the headlines, and tapped a message from his father. "You played free. That's all that matters." Kylian smiled faintly. The world was coming for him now, louder, faster, more demanding than ever. But in that moment, with his feet still sore and his pulse still dancing, he reminded himself. The crown and the chains. Russia 2018. The World Cup wasn't just a tournament, it was a stage, and Kylian Mbappé stormed it like a comet. 19 years old, wearing the French blue, carving through defenses as if he'd been doing it for decades. In the final against Croatia, he scored with the calm precision of a veteran and celebrated with the joy of a child. France lifted the trophy. A nation erupted. But something inside Kylian stayed quiet. He returned to France as a national hero. Headlines crowned him the future of football. Billboards lit up with his face. Sponsors competed for his signature. And marketing executives whispered about legacy, value, and global reach. They called him the young king. But no one asked what it felt like to wear the crown. Behind closed doors, his schedule became a machine. Interviews at sunrise, brand shoots at noon, training at dusk. He didn't speak out, he smiled, he nodded, he performed. But in rare moments alone, he'd stare at his reflection and struggle to recognize the person staring back. He missed Bondy. Not because it was simple, but because it was real. There he was, Kylian. Not Mbappé. Not an asset. Not a face worth millions. Just a boy with a ball and a dream. Now, that dream felt hijacked, repackaged into content, headlines, and public expectations he never asked for. On the pitch, he was electric. Off it, he was exhausted. Every goal came with analysis. Every mistake brought doubt. Social media was merciless. Friends became distant, unsure of how to talk to him. Strangers treated him like a myth. And then came the moment he couldn't ignore. The night he sat in a luxury suite in Paris, dressed in tailored perfection, surrounded by executives who talked about him, not to him. Deals were signed, partnerships announced, and through it all he stayed silent. But later that night, long after the applause faded, Kylian slipped out. He found a quiet park on the edge of the city. The grass was uneven, the lights flickered, and yet, it felt more sacred than any stadium he'd stepped in. He took off his shoes, picked up a forgotten ball near a bench, and began to juggle. 1 touch, 2, then 20. No audience, no pressure, just him. For the first time in months, he wasn't a symbol or a statement. He wasn't a campaign or a country's hope. He was simply a player. Feet moving, heart light, soul present. In that stillness, he remembered something vital. He loved the game, not the glory. The player who stayed human. The world expected him to leave. Real Madrid called. Again. The biggest club, the biggest lights, the final step in the script football legends are supposed to follow. Everyone thought he'd go. He had already conquered League One. Paris was too small now, they said. But Kylian hesitated. Not out of fear. Out of principle. He had learned to measure choices not by trophies, but by truth. And the truth was, he wasn't ready to abandon what he had started. At Paris Saint-Germain, he wasn't just another superstar, he was building something. Culture. A standard. A team that reflected who he was, not just what he could win. When he announced he would stay in Paris, the headlines called it a shock. Some fans accused him of lacking ambition. Pundits dissected it as a power move. But very few saw it for what it truly was. A young man reclaiming his narrative. Off the pitch, Kylian began to shift his focus. He visited Bondy more often, not as a celebrity in sunglasses, but as a mentor with sleeves rolled up. He funded new turf fields, created scholarship programs, and quietly